What's good, family? This is Norman Brown, a.k.a. Norman the Professor, your host of PneuPneuma Godcast. Welcome to the show today. Today I have one of my favorites that's been in the studio with me many times on many types of programs and different subjects. It's my brother, Terrance Frederick, in the house. What's up, Terrance?
Yeah, what's going on, bro? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm just, ready to get into this very heated topic and very necessary topic. And so before we even get into it, I just want to tell everybody today, today's topic is going to be on when does life begin? Now, that's pretty much the foundation of this conversation, but we're going to get into a whole lot of different facets. Terrance and I, as we kind of typically do, when we have certain subjects we're going to be talking about, sometimes we have a pre-conversation before we actually do a podcast. And sometimes those conversations are meant for us to see if we see things the same way on a subject, to see if we are on the same page or whatever, before we just go jumping into something where it's almost like we're kind of working it out on the air. So we did that again this time, and what started out as one thing kind of morphed into another thing, and I just kind of sensed in my spirit that there was something much deeper here that we needed to talk about. Now, it kind of came out of something that Terrance said. Terrance, I don't know if you remember exactly, or maybe not exactly, but around about what you said to me about what you see as being the thing that PneuPneuma does, that other podcasts may not do, and that's kind of what separates PneuPneuma from other places. Do you remember that statement you made?
I don't remember the statement. If you spark me, I'm sure it'll come back to me.
It was something along the lines of we deal with things on a spiritual level versus other people dealing with things on a surface or social or political or whatever level.
Yeah. So many people approach topics like abortion, same-sex marriage, whatever it is, they approach them from a civic mindset, a political mindset, a fleshly mindset. But PneuPneuma, I mean, it is what it is. If you understand what pneuma is, you understand that the spirit is the breath of God. It's that. So when you understand that, then you understand that you have to come from a place that precedes the natural, that precedes the natural things, the physical things, the things that are, I would say, the outcome, and it goes to the root, to the core of the matter, how the Most High sees it from his perspective. And so this topic is one of the same things, just like the other topics, where it's like, let's get to the root of it, because you can't really deal with something if you're just chopping off leaves and branches and you don't get to the root. So I know that's what PneuPneuma does. That's in its name, in its foundation. So that's a good thing.
All right, cool, man. Yeah, I just wanted you have a way of how you explain things when you and I talk. I just love the way you break it down, and so I wanted you to do that just to kind of set the tone. So as you heard just now, if you hadn't already figured it out and you've been listening to PneuPneuma for some time, that's what it's pretty much all about. We get to the root of things. We get down to what is actually the source of what's causing certain problems, and what is the source of the answer, and things like that. So that's pretty much what, it kind of gave me a new focus on the mandate, so to speak, that the Lord has given me, and it made me kind of see things a little bit differently and a little bit clearer when you made that statement the other day, man. So I just want to thank you for that in advance, for helping me to refocus, so to speak, and to really kind of remember why I'm really doing all this. So with that being said, man, like I said, we're going to be talking about when does life really begin, because the reason why that's important for us to understand is because many people who are talking about the subject of abortion, they're just coming from it. They're coming to it with oh, well, you should know that this isn't, the way it should be because that's a little baby in the womb. And then sometimes they might say something like, well, and this is something that we'll kind of discuss a little bit more later, but, it might come from the perspective of, well, if a man or someone killed a woman that was pregnant, they would call that a double murder. It's been so many times when that's happened, when they said it was a double homicide. And then I'm thinking to myself, when I hear that, I'm like, well, if you could call this a double homicide when it is someone's life being taken in that regard, and it's almost as if, well, if the mother is killed, then we're going to definitely count both of them, not just one, you know what I'm saying, so we can make it even worse or something, instead of if a woman decided to kill her baby, then she would be charged with murder. And the doctor that did it would be charged with murder. So, it's stuff like that when people, they want to give, it's almost like a double standard. Exactly, that's what it was. It's a double standard. Why would we call it murder in one case and not call it murder in another case? What are your thoughts on that, Terrance?
I mean, that's 100% accurate. That shows the limitation of a democracy and how, when you think about a theocracy, all the laws are coming from one source, one spirit, one mind, and they're all connected. And so they all make sense, the laws that come from God. When it comes to man, they'll create a law that makes sense on one end and then create another law that contradicts really the principles of the other law. But because it's democratic, it's like you said, it's hypocrisy. It's not all coming from the same logic or logos. It's not coming from that same computation. So, yeah, I agree with that 100%. We are kind of schizophrenic in our morality, in our ideas of what is justice or what is right, just because of how it's set up. And even though it's the best system when it comes down to governing nations, it has flaws because you have people who are making laws that are not submitted to him. And so that's one of those examples of a flawed morality and a hypocritical and double standard morality when it comes to that.
Yeah. So, initially, this conversation that I had with you was coming out of the fact that I spoke to someone who clearly said to me that if, they were talking about it like this. They were saying that they know that I was jumping for joy about something, about the decision that happened recently with the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade. The first thing that people need to understand about Roe versus Wade, that was never a law. Matter of fact, it was a decision, as they said, that was made contrary to the law that already existed. The law that already existed is in the actual Constitution itself and also within the Declaration of Independence. People that don't know what the Constitution says would completely not have a clue about what I'm talking about because they would just be like, oh, wait a minute. I mean, I know that the Constitution says that you have the right to bear arms. I know it says, we have the right to pursue happiness and liberty and all these kind of things. And it's like, okay, yeah, but what else do you know about the Constitution? The Constitution has a very deep thing within it that talks about life in a way that apparently most people have no idea, because if they did, they wouldn't be saying certain things that they're saying about the life of a child, because the life of a child is covered by the Constitution. And so we're going to look at that also today. But I just want to say that when you say that the supreme law in every state, they're supposed to be, every law that they make is supposed to back up the supreme law of the land. And the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. But not only that, but you have all these other things that, that are basically in there that are they're forgotten. Many, many times people have no idea what these things are, and they just make up statements and things like that based on an idea, but without actually knowing what is it that they are, what is it that these things are saying in the law that they would be supposedly, I guess, using as their support for what they so-called believe and what they want to stand for. What I've seen in many times with with people and their so-called standing up for their rights, they have done so based on a modern way of thinking, not the way that the laws were originally set up in this country to be. So, for instance, when we talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what are we talking about essentially when we say life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? I think some people think that just means whatever you want to do, that's what you can do. Instead of there's certain types of things that were discussed and that were, when they said these things, that's certain things that they meant. For instance, if you go to most states, maybe every state for all I know, I think it was in every state that they used to have laws that they used to actually enforce about sodomy. Every state had these laws. But over time, through all this nonsense that's been going on where people have been changing what laws mean and things of that nature or ignoring certain things and whatnot, it's come to the point where now these laws of sodomy are only used in a case where it's like, let's say a male violates a female anally. And then they'll call that sodomy. And they did that to Tupac when he was alive. I'm sure you remember that.
No, I didn't get that. So what you saying, that they charged him with sodomy?
They were calling it sodomy. They said that he sodomized some females, or a female in particular.
No, I missed that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna look that up real quick while I'm talking about that. But basically,
but let me say this while you're looking that up, because I do have a question or maybe something that you could break down, because I was listening to you talk about how the unborn babies covered under the Constitution are covered under the constitutional law. I think that's an interesting thing to look at and find out about when we get through with this other one, because I was just thinking about the idea, if a person gets pregnant under say it's let me see, I'm trying to see, say it's a illegal citizen or a legal alien, how they say, immigrant, and they get pregnant in America, but yet they don't have the baby in America. They have the baby, say, in Mexico or whatever. My understanding of that was that they are Mexican citizens because of when the baby was born, where the baby was born at. But I could be wrong. I've never thought about the idea of if the person gets pregnant in the USA, is that baby a citizen because it was conceived in the USA, or does the citizenship right come when you're born, wherever you're born? Because I want to link that to what you were talking about as far as who or what is covered under constitutional law. So we can get into that later on. It was just an idea or thought I was thinking about whenever you said, hey, even the unborn child is covered under the constitutional law. But are you looking up, I guess you're looking up the Tupac situation right now?
Yeah, I found it.
Okay.
So here's the thing, man. Okay. I want to, we'll get into that first. We'll talk about the Tupac situation. So I'm reading the article. This is from 1993. And it's November the 20th, 1993. And it's written by Chuck Phillips. It says, controversial rapper and actor Tupac Amaru Shakur was arrested Thursday for forcible sodomy and unlawful imprisonment of a 20-year-old woman at the upscale Parker Meridian Hotel in New York City, police said. The 22-year-old rapper was detained along with two other suspects Friday in a Manhattan detention facility after an unidentified woman alleged that the singer and two other men held her down while a fourth male sodomized her in a hotel room. The fourth suspect was still at large Friday. Shakur, whose top 20 hit single Keep Your Head Up is being touted for its positive pro-woman message, faces a maximum penalty of up to 29 years in jail if convicted on the two felony counts. Shakur's New York attorney, Michael Warren, said the charges against the rapper are false and claimed the woman who has already hired a lawyer for the purpose of filing a civil action. The rapper, who made his start as part of Oakland group Digital Underground, told New York police that he is now a resident of Newhall, California. This is only the latest in a string this year of legal problems for Shakur. So basically, it has more that it says after that, but I just wanted to stop there because that brings out the point that I was saying about the sodomy. So again, for those that don't know what sodomy is and don't know what it's based on, we're going to get a little bit into that just to help you understand something. Sodomy comes from the word Sodom, which is the name of a city that was mentioned in the Bible. I don't know if it's been mentioned in history anywhere. I have no idea. But in the Bible, in the historical book of the Bible, it has been mentioned, and it was talked about back in the times of Abraham being alive, and which tells you this goes way back in the early days of human history. And this city was a city they called Sodom and Gomorrah. So now let me know if I'm wrong about this, but was it two different cities, or the two cities, or the one city had the name Sodom and Gomorrah? Because I'm thinking it's probably two different cities, if I remember correctly.
I believe so. I hadn't checked that in a while, but I believe that's right.
Okay. That's neither here nor there. It's not going to really take away from what we're saying. The point is, if it was two cities, if it was one city, there was the name Sodom in there. So God told Abraham he was going to destroy this city called Sodom, and he said, he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and he was going to do it based upon the fact that there was all kinds of things that they were doing there, and one of the things that they were doing there was having homosexuality going on, and it was rampant. So when we look up, so the word Sodom in the Hebrew language, it actually means burning or burnt, which is kind of interesting that it means that. But I'm going to read a little bit of the passage. It's from Genesis chapter 10. Actually, this is where the first mention of it is. So it apparently looks like it's two different cities. But it says, Genesis chapter 10 says in verse 19, and the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon as you come to Gerar unto Gaza, as you go unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. Then in Genesis chapter 13, verse 10, it says, And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you come unto Zoar. So in verse 12, it says, Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. Verse 13, But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. So then we get into the story where, God basically tells him, I'm going to destroy, this land. And God starts negotiating with him and says, well, if there's this many, that are there that are not, that are righteous rather, then will you then save the city? And he said, okay, if it's 50, he started out at 50. He went down. He kept going down all the way down to 10. He couldn't even find 10 people in the city that were righteous. That means that Lot's family, and they were the only ones that were righteous. And basically, that was obviously less than 10 people. So they ended up, having to leave the city. But the point is that, and then when you look at, I want to go to Ezekiel chapter 16. It says in verse 55, When your sisters, Sodom and her daughters, shall return to their former estate, and Samaria and her daughters shall return to their former estate, then you and your daughters shall return to your former estate. For your sister Sodom was not mentioned by your mouth in the day of your pride, before your wickedness was discovered, as at the time of your reproach of the daughters of Syria and all that are round about her, the daughters of the Philistines, which despise you round about. Now, there's somewhere, and I thought that was it, but I'm trying to find the part where it breaks down. It actually breaks down why God brought a judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah the way he did. And it says how it talked about the pride. Okay, I think this is it. Okay. It's still in verse 6, in chapter 16 rather. And it says in verse 49, Behold, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Pride was number one. Now listen to that. Oh my goodness. Woo! Pride. Yeah, we just left so-called Pride Month, the month that they decided to dedicate to all those prideful people who are just right lining up with what they were told, what was talked about them all these thousands of years ago, way before TV, way before social media. They were talking about pride way back then. And isn't it interesting that they're calling it pride at this point? Then it says fullness of bread. That's the second reason. The third reason, abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters. Fourth reason, neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. Fifth reason, and they were haughty, which is another form of pride, another word for pride, and committed abomination before me. Therefore I took away as I saw good. I took them away, rather, as I saw. Neither has Samaria committed half of your sins, but you have multiplied your abominations more than they, and have justified your sisters in all your abominations which you have done. So that's the scripture that really goes into details about, why Sodom and Gomorrah was judged the way it was. And so here's the point. In sodomy, that word came from Sodom. And Sodom represented the type of sexual relationship that God called an abomination. So in this situation with Tupac Shakur, they were saying that he did that. Now, what is that? What is called sodomy? Well, if you got two men with each other, sodomy is obviously anal sex. That's what it comes down to. Between two men, that's anal sex. Between two women, it could be one or the other. They have two openings. So the bottom line is there is a spirit that goes with that, and there's also a judgment that came with that. But here it is again in the law books. There's many law books that still have this. They all have it, but they're not all following it, except in certain cases. And as you can see, this was back in 1993. So we're talking about a long time ago, almost 30 years ago when this happened. So, you know, who knows what they look at nowadays or what they consider to be, you know, some kind of a problem. And they would call it like, oh, this is sodomy or whatever. So we're going to charge them with sodomy. We haven't heard recently of any cases like that. So that's something that, you know, I don't know where that kind of thing is being, you know, expressed or being charged against anyone. But the point is that that's a law that's no longer being really looked at in the cases where, you know, really should be. So, so with that being said, I mean, do you have anything to add to that?
I just want to, for the record, I want to stitch this together and say that there is a spirit that is connected to the spirit of sodomy, or the spirit that goes along with the alphabet community, and the spirit that's connected to the abortion of babies, because basically it's a spirit that is anti the reproduction of life. And we're going to get into this some more later. But it's the same spirit. It's operating on two different planes. It's two different expressions, but it's still connected to the enemy trying to cause the lack of reproduction, the lack of bodies being created for Yahweh's usage, the lack of temples that would be created for his presence to reside in, whether it's in the form of abortion, or whether it's in the form of same sex. It's no reproduction going on. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. I just wanted to make a connection between what we said our topic is and what we're talking about right now. But that's all I have for now.
I like that. That was a great point that you brought out. So I'm going to read the Declaration of Independence so that we can see why I said what I said about how it's already a violation of law to allow for abortion in America. And when you're talking about the supreme law of the land, which the Declaration of Independence as well as the Constitution are, they are the supreme laws of the land. And if anything goes against those supreme laws, then that's a problem. That is actually a violation. So I'm going to read what this Declaration of Independence says. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life. We can stop right there. That is a right. Life is a right. And when anybody takes the life of a child, they've already violated this law, which is the supreme law of the land. You got anything to say to that before we go on?
So Yeah, so I know the people listening, and some of the people refuting this in their minds and in their hearts and are speaking back to the podcast and saying, but, you know, this is not a child, because we want to deal with when does life begin, because in their mind they're refuting, this is not a child yet, and this is not a born citizen yet, and so this does not apply to them because they are not yet citizens who would actually be able to benefit from the constitutional rights that's being applied to them in this. We have to speak to that. We got to get to them and speak to that part, because there are many who are saying, yeah, that's true, but that's for people, that's for those who are actually the citizens of this United States of America, and they argue that the people or the unborn children are not only not children, but some would argue that they are not even considered living beings yet, and that's what we're going to get into. But I just wanted to highlight that we see you, because we know that's some of your disputes in your heart while you hear what Brother Norman was just breaking down.
All right, so now I'm going to go back into an earlier part of that same Declaration of Independence, and this is where we're going to get into why those people that have that in their mind are wrong. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We can stop right there. Creation is the subject, not being birthed. We're not even talking about birth. We're talking about creation. So when you say that we've been created.
Wait, speak to this real quick, because many will argue that that the creation is not complete until they are born. So speak to that.
Okay, well, this is kind of almost going to push us into what we're really going to use to refute any and everything that anyone will say after this point, because right now we were trying to just set it up, to kind of, set the stage, but we need to actually get into the actual meat of this, where we get our whole, if you want to call it this, our whole defense, our whole argument, so to speak, from, and it comes out of Jeremiah chapter 1. Now, one thing that I would say once again, as I pretty much say a lot on this podcast, is that I could care less about what you think if it doesn't match what the Word of God says. God could care less what you think if your thoughts do not line up with His Word. He said it in His Word that our thoughts are far different from His thoughts. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways. And the thing about it is, we have to realize that whatever He is saying, whatever He is thinking, that's the wavelength we better get on. Not try to get on, not hope we can get on, not, think about whether we want to get on. You have to get on it. Because if you don't, there's certain things that are straight up and down. They will mean either your demise or they will mean your eternal bliss. And that is a fact. God has certain things that He has said outright. These are the sins that you will be thrown into the lake of fire for. No doubt about it. It ain't no question. Nobody's going to have an argument to give Him. He is not accepting no kind of plea bargains. It is what it is. He is the ultimate judge. And if you don't line up with that judge, it doesn't matter how you feel. You might be feeling fire for the rest of your eternal existence. That's how you're going to feel if you don't feel the way He feels. And I'm just going to put it as bluntly as possible, because I'm not here to play games. One thing about what I'm talking about on the podcast, I'm trying to make people realize how serious things are in the eyes of God. And I just want to say that for all of those that are listening that have already had the opportunity to be able to listen to me and to listen to Terrance or whoever else they listen to, you have life. And with that life, now you have choices that you can make. But there are people that were supposed to be on this planet that never had a chance to come and make any decisions for themselves. They were just aborted, taken out before they had a chance. I'm going to make this very gruesome because I need you to understand how horrible this really is. Let's just say the baby was able to get to the point where their arms and legs and things like that are very well defined, where nobody can say, well, all that was a shape that kind of looked humanoid, or it looked like it could have been maybe something the start of a hand, or, no. I'm talking about they actually have some limbs that you can see. Now, I don't know how far into their development they would have to be to have that, but what I do know is that within, I think it was like 8 weeks, or maybe it was less, I don't remember exactly, but it was at least around 8 weeks when I saw a sonogram of my oldest daughter, and I saw her with legs and arms flipping around in the womb. I saw it with my own eyes. It was like she was dancing in the womb. And it just really touched me. It touched my heart when I saw that, because I was like, wow, this is really happening. And here's the point, that we have people now who would, they would say that it's okay to have an abortion even up to, what is it, like 28 days after they're born?
Yeah, I don't know the amount of days.
Well, it's somewhere around there. It's almost up to 30 days after their birth that they are still allowed in certain states to kill the baby. And there are depraved people in their minds that will listen to this podcast and say, well, that's okay too. I really would love to know how many people who so-called consider themselves Christians will say that up to 28 days after a baby is born that it's okay to kill them.
Yeah, that's why I can't wait for you to get. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Say what you want to say.
I was going to say that's why I can't wait for us to get into this, because we're going to break up that whole mindset that people have when we deal with this in Jeremiah, and then there's a scripture in Psalms I want to get into to deal with exactly what you're saying, because the mindsets of people is like they've become corrupted, their minds have become dull, their hearts have become dull, and to the word, and also just to really common sense and reason. So, yeah, go ahead. I didn't want to stop your flow. I was just like, yeah, we got some stuff that'll help you all. If you really are a seeker of truth, we're going to help you change your mind.
Yeah, so basically, there's actual videos out there that actually depict showing how they commit abortion. There's several different ways they do it, and we're going to talk about two of the ways that I know of for sure. Actually, there's a third way we might mention too. The one way that they do it is, it's like they put some kind of a vacuum inside of the woman and they suck the baby out of her womb into whatever this is, and that is the end of their life whenever they get sucked into that. Another way that they do it is through dismembering the baby, cutting their head off, chopping off their limbs, their arms, their legs, one by one and pulling each piece out, and they count them as they pull them out to make sure that the whole baby was pulled out of them. And they'll put it in a dish on the side so that they can look and see. And they'll literally put it together like this is some Mr. Potato Head or something. Like it's some kind of toy that they bought from the store. And they want to see the various parts of that toy laid out